again. And what about the tip jam? You saw
What if the most dangerous player in the NBA isn't the healthiest, but the most misunderstood?
Davis. And it's Anthony Davis driving.
As the trade deadline inches closer, front offices across the league are quietly circling one name.
Deadline acquisitions of Martin and Davis have played their best games as Mavericks tonight. Oh, Davis, okay!
A name that instantly shifts championship odds, reroutes franchises, and terrifies opposing coaches in a 7-game series. That name is Anthony Davis. The league isn't asking whether Anthony Davis can still dominate. The league is asking something far more important. Is the risk finally worth the reward again? Because here's the truth. Injuries don't scare contenders. Wasted playoff windows do. And right now, several teams are staring at that exact fear. If you're enjoying this deep breakdown and want more no BS NBA analysis, make sure you subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. The Anthony Davis market is heating up. Let's be clear, this isn't smoke without fire. Multiple teams are actively exploring paths to land Anthony Davis, and the list keeps growing. Initial reports linked teams like Detroit, Atlanta, and Toronto. Now, even Golden State has entered the conversation. That alone tells you everything you need to know. The Warriors aren't in the business of half measures. As long as Stephen Curry is still performing at an elite level, Golden State has no choice
from the mid-range. Keonello's job is to slow down Steph and Curry,
but to swing for home runs. And Anthony Davis represents one of the last remaining realistic stars who can swing a playoff series without requiring an impossible trade package. However, reality complicates things quickly. The Warriors' biggest contract chip, Draymond Green, isn't exactly appealing to every franchise. Dallas in particular has shown little interest in absorbing his contract or his baggage. That forces Golden State into complicated multi-team constructions just to stay in the conversation. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, insiders are reporting that Atlanta may be the most aggressive suitor of all. And when that intel comes from someone as connected as Mark Stein, teams listen. This isn't casual interest, this is calculated urgency. Let's address the elephant in the room. Anthony Davis and injuries. Every Anthony Davis discussion inevitably hits the same wall: availability. And yes, it's fair. Davis has dealt with injuries throughout his career, including yet another groin issue this season. But here's where context matters. When healthy, Anthony Davis remains one of the most impactful players in basketball. In just a limited sample this season, he's put up dominant stat lines against elite competition, anchoring defenses while still producing offensively at a superstar level. This isn't a declining Joel Embiid situation. This isn't a max contract sunk cost. This is still Anthony Davis, an elite rim protector, a walking double-double, and one of the few players in the league who can single-handedly erase entire offensive game plans. Teams aren't trading for 82 games of Anthony Davis. They're trading for 3 to 4 weeks of postseason dominance. And in today's NBA, that's all it takes. In fact, the injuries may actually be the feature, not the bug. They lower the acquisition cost. They create opportunity. They allow contenders to buy elite impact at a discount, something that almost never happens. That's why teams are circling. Why Golden State can't afford to wait. The Warriors' motivation is simple. Stephen Curry is still elite. That fact alone removes any excuse for patience. At 37 years old, Curry is performing like he's still in his prime. That puts Golden State in a bind. They cannot rebuild. They cannot retool slowly. Every remaining asset must be viewed through one lens. Does this help us win now? Anthony Davis fits that timeline perfectly. Pairing Davis with Curry creates instant postseason credibility. Davis handles the defensive load, protects the rim, and punishes mismatches inside, allowing Curry to operate with more freedom than he's had in years. Yes, the trade mechanics are messy. Yes, Dallas doesn't love Golden State's assets, but complexity has never stopped contenders before. And let's be honest, chasing Giannis is a fantasy for most teams. Anthony Davis is attainable. That alone makes him more valuable in this market. Atlanta's aggressive push changes everything. While Golden State calculates, Atlanta appears ready to pounce. Reports indicate the Hawks are willing to move significant young assets, including a recent #1 pick who hasn't developed as expected. That alone signals how seriously Atlanta views this opportunity. The Hawks are stuck in the NBA's worst place, good enough to avoid top picks, not good enough to contend. Anthony Davis offers them a chance to reset their trajectory immediately. And here's the key. Atlanta isn't trying to include Trae Young in an Anthony Davis deal. That's massive. Instead, the framework reportedly focuses on young talent, pick swaps, and expiring contracts. For Dallas, that's flexibility. For Atlanta, it's a gamble worth taking. When a franchise is willing to move recent lottery picks, it means patience has run out. The Trae Young question. Nobody wants to answer. This trade buzz also exposes a harsher truth. Atlanta may be more open to moving Trae Young than ever before. The on-court results haven't justified the cost. Defensive issues persist. Injuries haven't helped. And financially, the Hawks are approaching a crossroads ownership may not be willing to cross. If Trae opts into his massive player option, Atlanta becomes expensive without being elite. If he leaves, they risk losing him for nothing. Neither scenario is appealing. That's why his name keeps surfacing quietly. Not loudly, but consistently. Teams like the Clippers, Bucks, and Kings all make theoretical sense depending on timeline, pick control, and financial flexibility. None are perfect fits. All come with risk. But the league knows this. Point guards with Trae's offensive talent rarely become available without leverage. And that's why this deadline could explode. Why this trade deadline could reshape the NBA zoom out. And the bigger picture becomes clear. Anthony Davis isn't just a player on the block, he's a litmus test. For contenders, he represents urgency. For fringe teams, he represents hope. For rebuilding teams, he represents assets. And his availability is forcing uncomfortable questions everywhere. Golden State must decide whether sentimentality matters more than banners. Atlanta must decide whether mediocrity is acceptable. Dallas must decide whether flexibility outweighs star power. And hovering over all of it, the possibility of even bigger dominoes falling. Because once one superstar moves, others follow. This is bigger than Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis may be the headline, but the story is about timing, risk, and ambition. Some teams will blink, others will swing. And one franchise will wake up the day after the deadline believing they've changed their future. Whether that belief holds is what makes this league so addictive. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button. It helps more than you think. Subscribe for weekly deep dives, trade rumors, and playoff-focused analysis. And comment below which team should take the risk on Anthony Davis, and why.